So, like a lot of people who are watching their screens, and seeing the situation unfold in the US, uh, I felt kind of compelled, really, as an artist whose art has always been, past couple of decades now, about telling people stories, about kind of exploring issues around communities and how we engage or we don't engage, social issues, social justice, and just bringing light onto stories perhaps and people, everyday people that we don't really get to explore enough. And that's kind of really the spirit of what I do. And I've covered, whether it's people struggling wherever it is in the world, whether it's in Palestine or whether it's in Syria, Lebanon, refugees. These are the topics I explore, or even right here on my doorstep in the UK, exploring kind of fractured Britain and multicultural society. So the situation in America really is nothing new to me in the work that I do. It's something that actually I felt compelled to continue to explore with. And doing this piece of art served a number of purposes, really. I've traveled to America and worked and painted in the US, and I have lots of friends that I speak to daily, especially in the lockdown period. I've been talking to people in Seattle, in New York, in Chicago, in California, and I talk regularly, and I have friends who are African Americans, and we explore things. And basically, it was very simply put, a bit of solidarity to kind of say, we are here, we listen, right? I know one thing: the power of putting something up, thousands of miles away, when it's seen through social media by others, we should never underestimate the power it has. One might say, what's the point? What difference is it making by painting this in the city of Birmingham on a street corner? What tangible benefits does it really have? Well, as I said, when I've done stuff in the past, when I did something about Palestine many years ago, a friend of mine who works in the field, in the humanitarian field, told me when he went to Palestine, he had kids come running up to him. This is about 10 years ago, in 2009. He had kids coming running up to him saying, do you live anywhere near the mural that said, Free Palestine in Birmingham, right? In the inner city part of Birmingham. They knew about it, they'd heard about it, they'd seen it, right? And he said the joy in their faces when he's there, and he told them that, yes, he sees it every day. So we should never underestimate the impact painting something as simple as just putting something out there, that it has for the people perhaps who are, experiencing that struggle, whilst at the same time using that art to inform others perhaps that may not have given it that much thought. Raise awareness here on our doorstep, both for us to understand the struggle of those people, and also perhaps to reflect on our own realities, on our own reflections, on our own, the parallels that we may have in British society, because we know we have our own cases here of where we've had, inequality, not cases, a kind of endemic problem in society, in fact. And so it's twofold, really. There's multiple kind of facets to what the purpose of this art was.
Yeah, because we look to the US and what happened to George Floyd and say, that's terrible, what happened there, and look at everything that's happening there. But it's led to a conversation here to say, well, actually, it's certainly not perfect here, is it?
No. And I would add that also we see something on our screens and our digital screens, but when we see something on a street corner, in a busy street corner, there's something quite extraordinary about seeing truth being put in a public space. There's quite something extraordinary. It's almost like the city is speaking, and when people see that, we should never underestimate the power of seeing something on a street corner. We know there's certain revolutions, in fact. We know examples of in Syria, perhaps, where, uprisings have been sparked off, in fact, by the simple act of someone scrolling something on a wall. This has sparked off movements where people feel when they see something, it actually has this a kind of a knock-on effect, a ricochet, where you are inspired. If you felt that that person has strength to speak out, it would only but encourage someone else that if they can do it, I can do that. And to put it in a public space, especially in a position, in a place that represents authority, because the walls are that, they are kind of a symbolic of power and authority that govern over us. But when we take over that space, when we place something there, whether it's with permission or with not, yeah, even more interesting, with permission, we can still kind of almost have a command over that authority, and almost take over in the simple act of painting something that has an unexpected message, I think.
I mean, the mind kind of goes to, when you mentioned walls, to the, to the Berlin walls, a kind of perfect example that a lot of people will have the kind of image of that, and the, the sort of graffiti and, murals that were painted on that. It really highlighted the issues there at the time. But your stencil is quite powerful in its simplicity, I think, because it's a figure, I guess, in a sort of gas mask, would you say? Is that what it is? And then it says "I can't breathe," which just hits a certain nerve, I think. Is that what you were kind of going for?
Yeah, I think you said the key word there was simple. You said simplicity was key. I mean, I think doing something in black and white, doing something that was very quickly kind of understood. I think it's very different to a complex, colorful mural that might take hours and hours and hours to execute on a street corner. I think it's very different in that it was just a striking image that I just felt I wanted it to be immediately accessible and appreciated. Something that you didn't really need to have an understanding of art, and that's the beauty of art, of street art in particular anyway, right? It's something that's immediately appreciated and accessible by all, whether you're an art enthusiast or not. So I'd say absolutely, when thinking about what to write and what to paint, I just felt the words "I can't breathe" was something that everybody can identify with, and it instills a certain kind of emotion. It's profound, it's heavy, it's like it's something that interestingly has a lot of parallels, in fact, because and that's the intention, to connect with people on many different levels, because perhaps people may interpret our own, when we're talking about masks right now and the inability to breathe because of a mask, right? It's something that we've all already been exploring in lockdown. People were protesting, in fact, for the freedom to not wear a mask because they felt restricted. Or perhaps people have been debating the benefit of mask versus not wearing a mask. People talking about the discomfort of wearing a mask, the need to wear a mask, and actually the symbol of a mask, especially a mask in the graffiti world. Every graffiti artist identifies with a mask as well. So there's kind of many layers of what the mask can instill in various different people. But certainly right now, when we're exploring masks and its purpose, as well as the idea of restricting somebody, and making them unable to breathe is clearly something that would connect with people with this current situation, when they think about, here is somebody who was, without any choice, they were unable to breathe due to an oppressive force that restricted their breathing, as opposed to us placing our mask that protects us from breathing. So this is the reason why I chose a very simple, and also, of course, the mask itself be worn by graffiti artists, but at the same time by protesters protecting themselves from the tear gas and again, the image that where we've seen the horrific images where peaceful protesters are running away from the oppression of tear gas thrown by police officers. So again, there's kind of multiple kind of, I suppose, connotations and images that it would conjure up.
And there's been quite a strong reaction from the community there as well, in terms of people kind of relating to it and sharing the image and everything as well, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I had no doubt about that. It's never a surprise when I paint certain things, that I just know that this is going to really connect with everybody. And that's always key for me as well, to take some difficult issues and look at how can that straddle and sit across almost different sectors of society. How can it appeal to various people? And that's important for me. It's easy to do like a rainbow and say, well, everybody likes a rainbow, but it's a bit harder to put something that's a complex and nuanced subject matter, but actually try to make it something that can connect with and appeal to a wide kind of mass audience. So this is something that the people have responded brilliantly to, beautifully to. People of all background, people of all color, people of all class have stopped in their tracks, and that's what it was designed to do, to make people stop in their tracks. And I always describe graffiti art as being exactly that, a kind of a bit of a glitch that's required in the kind of visual landscape. A glitch is necessary for society to kind of make a snap out of the kind of the slumber that we are in. And this image and the words, I think it has done that, and I'm pleased, and I'm quite feel quite blessed actually that I've been able to bring that to the visual landscape and bring something to this important situation, so that people in Britain, people in the city of Birmingham, in this local neighborhood, are thinking more about a subject matter that I think was needed.
Now, I think you've got 4 of these stencils now in the city. The first one was painted over, wasn't it? Whitewashed in the first day. Was that? I mean, how much of a surprise was that when that happened? Tell me about that and the comeback, so to speak.
It's funny, the situation we've been in, even though it's really exploded, and there's been lots of press interviews I've done with BBC and all kinds, kind of jumping on this story. It's also nothing new to me as an artist. I've been in this, it's so much deja vu with this. Over the past couple of decades, I've had absolute mirror situations in Chicago, in Melbourne, and in Birmingham previously, where there's been mass media attention. There's perhaps been a politician involved who's ordered the removal or has misunderstood one of my murals. So it's funny that this is a recurring situation where a piece of public art creates such a fuss, especially when something's removed, right? So it's not a surprise at all that it was removed. In fact, that very wall I painted, which is quite a busy junction, I've had how many pieces off that? Twice before, that same wall, the art has been removed within days, right? So it wasn't a surprise. Although I'd say, because it was removed twice before, I would have hoped it would have stayed a bit longer. That was the surprise, that within 13 hours it was removed. At least when I painted it before, they've lasted a number of days, maybe a week or so. But this, I could not really get my head around the idea that it was taken off so quickly. And the simple thing was, I think people just, if I'd painted a rainbow on there, I think it would have been left alone for a long time. Even though the city council, Birmingham City Council, will say it was a mistake and there was no political kind of motivations behind its removal, I would seriously question that. Like I said, if I put a rainbow on there or a teddy bear, and or even if I did let's put, for argument's sake here, I love the NHS piece of art on there, something that society perhaps is comfortable with.
Yeah.
I'd say it would probably stay up a lot longer. But because of the message, I am questioning that. I've just been on the radio just now, actually, listening to their response, a councillor who said it was a mistake. And I'm interrogating this further, because there is plenty of street art within meters of what I just did that's been left for months and months and months. Sorry, not street art, tags, vandalism, right? And the city authorities hasn't had that approach with that stuff. Why was this removed so quickly? And I'm not letting people off the hook so easy with just it was an honest mistake, it won't happen again. I don't trust it won't happen again. And city councils and city authorities, at the time we're in now, right? When we see institutions, organizations, and authorities and the disconnect with the people, you have this kind of disparity. I think we must stamp out and we must hold people to account to bridge that divide here. And the people must be not seen as something which is perhaps even an afterthought, but really placed at the heart. Marginalized voices must be taken away from the fringes and put right at the heart. And in the COVID era we're in, on top of which, what's the situation we're in now, I think it's high time that people are held to account to really ensure that there are people out there not making decisions that can be truly dangerous, because this could have really sparked something very, very dangerous for society. Luckily, it didn't. We kept our cool and we listened to what the city council had to say, but we won't be letting them off the hook that easy. And we will hold people to account to say, this can't happen again.
I mean, the fact is that in trying to wipe away the image, it's actually served to amplify it, in fact. And, you know, the voice has grown and the visual image has spread, and, you know, it's kind of had the opposite effect to what was intended, it seemed.
Absolutely. I always put it this way. Put the image in your head of somebody getting their hand like this and putting it across your mouth to forcefully stop you from speaking. No one would accept that type of behavior, that oppression. So putting some white paint and covering over an art that speaks truth, it's the same thing, right? You are silencing a people who are speaking truth, and that people want this message. People are crying out. So city authorities, by painting that out, I would challenge them and say, just put that in your head for a bit about silencing someone physically like that. And that's what's happened here. And the irony, as you mentioned, of the fact that them erasing it actually has led to people around the world now discovering that image. So there's a kind of, maybe a kind of, what's the word? Blessing in disguise, perhaps.
Mm.
And I always say, you try and suppress something, and then you watch how strong it comes back, right? Just as, in fact, with this stencil, this image that was painted, when they took it off, if I'm honest, I didn't intend for it to be more than just one location. I thought, I'm going to put one bold piece. In fact, I very rarely repeat an image. If I create a piece of art and I put it up in a place, you don't generally tend to repeat it, right? It's a one-off. But I felt compelled when it was removed, not only to replace it in that same location, but then to extend that to multiple neighborhoods. So they take it down, we bring back 10 of them, was my kind of the spirit which I had. And not just bring them back, but even bring them back bigger. And that's why there was these multiple stencils appearing across the city in different neighborhoods, not just that one locality, but also a giant projection in the city center next to the major train station. So you take it off, and we're placing this right at the heart of the city, at the gateway of the city. So that's what happens when you try to silence somebody.
What is it that you want to achieve from, you know, the conversations that this art has sparked?
I think I've kind of alluded to already, in that placing people at the heart, everyday people, and placing community and people and minority voices, and not seeing them as something which is a bit of an afterthought, placing them right at the center. Because if we don't, and we don't prioritize in listening to those voices on the edge, and we kind of confine them to being there, bad stuff happens in the world. Let's put it in simple terms. When we don't empower these voices, and when we don't see reflections of these voices in wider society, whether it be on television, whether it be on billboards, you know, in the music industry, in the arts, in our theaters, when we don't see that, bad stuff happens. for us all. It affects us all. So it's easy to go, it doesn't really affect me giving voice to those people there. How does it impact upon me? It does. We study, we work together in the same places, we exist in these cities. When we go to the shopping mall, we're rubbing shoulders with people of all walks of life. So it absolutely affects us when we don't empower a certain part of society and allow them to freely express and exist and be who they are. And that's what I try to address in the work that I do, is about kind of bringing those things and not seeing it as this separate thing that needs a diversity tick box that we see perhaps in society, in British society. Certainly in the arts is something that is often the case, where diversity is seen as something that's an additional thing, but rather it should be placed at the center.
And this is something we spoke about just before I started recording, actually, was the, using graffiti art as a powerful medium to get a message across, like you're doing now. And I know you're saying that perhaps this isn't something that we see quite so often at the moment. Art as a powerful medium to do what you're setting out to achieve now.
I would say street art, especially street artists, it's different if you're a different medium. A fine art painter that's happy painting canvases, that's fine. But when we have access to people, hundreds, thousands of people every single day, when we place our art in the public space, and remember the key word is here, it's in the public space. So it's in a kind of a domain which belongs to us all. I feel like we have a sense of responsibility to think and explore things that definitely resonate, connect with the very public that see your work every day. I'm not saying all street art has to. Perhaps some street art can be a personal expression in a public space. But I'm troubled when it's the minority that that the minority is really placing the public and thinking about message and about community. When we land in a neighborhood, how much time do we take to explore the narratives of the people that we are painting for? Or are we painting for those people, in fact? Is important question marks I'd put to street art community. How often do we take time out to listen and immerse ourselves within a people? In fact, one of the things I try to do, I'm not saying I always achieve it, always striving to, is whenever I might land in a neighborhood is not just be parachuted in, but take the time to listen, immerse myself, connect with people. Even if it's on a very basic level, take off your headphones and turn your back to the wall and just engage with the people. It's very easy to kind of just land and say, I am going to paint this wall and this is my world here right now. But we also have to understand that this is not your neighborhood here. There are people who live here, who've been here for generations, and you are putting something in their neighborhood. So I'd say there's just an important question mark about how we engage with neighborhoods, especially if they're residential neighborhoods. How do we engage in such places? How do we respect the people? And I know it's a bit of an oxymoron perhaps for some, but how do we be a respectful graffiti artist? A graffiti artist can have and should have, of course, certain values and be respectful and not just be a big middle finger up at the world.